Hi everyone, I'm Ashutosh Akkalakote and welcome to my channel Goral KBS. Today on my channel Goral KBS, I'll be presenting the poem analysis of the poem The Second Coming by W.B. Yeats. This is how the poem goes. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming. Hardly are those words out when the vast image of the Spiritus Mundi troubles my sight. Somewhere in the sands of the desert, a shape with lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun, is moving its slow thighs, while all about it reel the shadows of the indignant desert birds. The darkness drops again. But now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by rocking cradle. And what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born? Okay, guys. Now let's get to know a little about the poet. This is the poet William Butler Yeats in 1903. Okay, so he was around during the time of 13 June 1865 to 28th January 1939. He was an Irish poet, dramatist, prose writer, and one of the foremost figures of the 20th century literature. Okay, so this clearly tells us that he was around during the time of World War One. Okay, so we'll be able to, this is required in order to take the point of view from the point of view I'm going to be using requires this prior knowledge. Now for the poem analysis, let's just see what point of view I'm talking about. The point of view I'm talking about is the point of view of the fact that the events around the creator of any literary work, be it a poem, be it a poet or a, an author, a playwright, right? Events around the creator. Even for me, I write poems once in a while. So even for me, the events that happen around me, such as global warming, they affect my literary work. Similarly, events around them, around those creators, those will have affected their literary works, right? So not completely, but to some extent, measurable. If not measurable, it can be felt, even if not this. So we'll keep that in mind, and so from that point of view, we'll be seeing, we'll be doing the poem analysis, right? Now, let's start. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. The winding gyre. The winding gyre is the world war because it kept raging and raging and raging. So turning and turning in the widening gyre of the war. Gaia as in Gaia means in some sense uh, tornado, okay, in one sense of the word. So the Gaia, this raging war, this intense form of power, human power, Turning in this, the falcon of humanity cannot hear the falconer who's calling. The falconer is calling. Who's the falconer? The peace. Peace is calling. Humanity, come back, come back, come back, come back. But this falcon of humanity can't hear. Okay? Things fall apart, the center cannot hold, mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. Things fall apart. The control, during that time, before the war, there were some centers of control, right? So these centers of control start to fall apart. Okay, these structures of control fall apart. Okay, these systems of control, they fall apart. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world, the blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. Mere anarchy of bloodshed, mere anarchy of bloodshed, of harm, of killing. The soldiers on neither side know who's right and who's wrong. They only know he is the opponent. In order for my country to win, I have to kill the opponent. That's all they know. Okay? They may know the reason, yet the key point is that their primary focus is trying to kill the opponent. The blood dim tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is downed. The blood dim tide is loosed, as in there is bloodshed everywhere. No, every soldier, every person has been called to war. So no person remains innocent. Right? The ceremony of innocence is drowned. No person remains innocent. The blood dim tide of bloodshed is loosed everywhere. The best lack all conviction. There's no knowing who's the best, who's the worst, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. They're trying to win the war. Everyone is at their worst. All the soldiers are at their worst. They're trying to kill the opponent. Okay? So they are full of passionate intensity. I'm doing this for my country. So that, even though that passion is good, in a sense that is still uh, evil when it sides with war. Because no one knows who's good and who's evil, right? So that's why it becomes telling who's the best and who's the worst becomes quite impossible in one sense. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. Now, what the poet wants is that he wants some second coming, some ray of hope to come and enlighten humanity, right? To come and save humanity from this apocalypse of sorts. He wants he wants humanity to understand, to go back and go back to its roots, to reform. Okay, so the second coming. Now, as soon as he thinks of the second coming, hardly are those words out when a vast image of the spiritus mundi troubles my sight. Hardly are those words out, the words, the second coming, out of his mouth, or they come into his head. Immediately, as soon as they just after he thinks of the second coming, he of image of something comes into his head. A very troubling image. It is described. The image is described below. A shape with lion body and troubles my sight. Somewhere in the sands of the desert, a shape with lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun, is moving its slow thighs. Somewhere in the sands of the desert of the dead, the desert of destruction, the desert where all humanity is lost. A shape with lion body and the head of a man, the Sphinx. The Sphinx, it is said to, the Sphinx is said to be a figure of power. It is supposed to be describing power. Okay? Human power. Here. It, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun. A gaze blank and pitiless as the sun describes an evil gaze in the eye of the Sphinx. The Sphinx is power. Okay? So if there's evil in the eye of the power, the figure which represents power, if that has a evil in it, if that has been poisoned, as in poison in the mind, then it will cause all sorts of destruction. It'll, if that is upset, it will cause a lot of destruction because it becomes very evil. It becomes very pitiless. It becomes a monster in one way. A gaze blank and pitiless as the sun is moving its slow thighs. A gaze cannot move. So, what is moving? The gaze can move through time. It cannot move through space, but it can move through time. So, gaze is moving through time. The time of war. It is moving slowly through time of war. While all about it reel the shadows of the indignant desert birds. Indignant desert birds? Desert birds which come and feed on the dead and decaying animals. It can be those scavenger birds, right? They come and they feed on the dead bodies of anything. So, in this desert of dead humanity, if you put out the dead bodies of humans, then these indignant desert birds will come and feed on them. And this is, since it's the time of war, it will keep on happening on a very daily basis. So it clearly shows that the war takes a long time, but there's a huge amount of death. There's a huge number of people who lose their lives because of this war in ways more than one. The darkness drops again. The darkness on war is peace. Or you can say the darkness of war has dropped from the scene. It has gone away. And peace has returned. The light of peace has returned to the scene. But now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare. The, the World War happened in the 20th century. So 20 centuries of stony sleep of this beast, this beast of power, the Sphinx, were vexed to nightmare, the nightmare of war, by a rocking cradle of by a rocking cradle of conflict. And what rough beast! Its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. So now after realizing all this, the poet questions. The poet questions himself and those around him. What kind of beast? Upset beast. Evil beast, rather. When it's turn to turn good, or when its time is up, slouches towards Bethlehem. Okay, what kind of beast? When its time is up, evil beast. When its time is up, what kind of beast goes and slouches, slouches as in moves slowly towards Bethlehem to be reborn, dies and then is reborn as some form of positivity. What kind of beast does that? What, in other words, he wants to know, can this human power, which because of the war had become such a raging evil beast, become a force of good, a force that will bring good everywhere? Okay, so that's what he wants to know. Okay, guys, now thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, and if you have any recommendations, please comment below using the hashtags I have given here. And if you want any other point of view, you can again comment and you can suggest. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone. Stay safe, stay positive, stay peaceful. I'm Ashutosh Akkalakote, Goril KBS. Bye, guys.